Hi, everybody. It's Diane Neto living in Barrie. Today, I'm going to talk about people who do not close their deals. So I've had a lot of purchases throughout my time, my experience and my years here. And even ones that aren't my clients that are calling me for advice about they bought a new build, they don't want to close the deal. Or circumstances have changed, especially during the pandemic. They bought at a high point. 3 months later, it was way less. And they were like, I'm not closing. I'm not buying the house. So they asked me what the ramifications of that are. I found a good article from a law firm that explains it. And I hope this helps you because people think that they can just walk away and lose their deposit, but there's a lot more involved than that. So, oh, that's funny. Look at that. There exists a common misconception that a buyer will only have to forfeit the deposit if they fail to close. This article will start by analyzing the law in relation to forfeit of deposit. So, where a buyer fails to close in most circumstances, the deposit will be forfeited. So, clearly outlines the law in Ontario in relation to deposits where a buyer fails to close the transaction. So technically, the deposit is forfeited without proof of any damage suffered by the vendor. So what is funny is that's why during the pandemic, people wanted more deposits. We used to around Barrie be able to put $1,000 down or $5,000, and now everybody wants 50 because they're scared of people walking away, right? So the other thing is that people don't realize the measure of damages. So if this is what I'll explain it to you because this just makes it more difficult, but it has all the points. If you fail to close a deal and you paid $500,000 for the house and okay, you gave up your deposit, you know that it's gone. If the seller gets $450,000 instead of $500,000 the second time around, they can go back after you for the difference. So the difference in the purchase price, they can come back to you. And I've heard it, somebody actually go to court and it actually, they got their money. It was $120,000. So the Ontario Court of Appeal owed the seller damages for staging, legal fees, carrying costs of the property, interest on the line of credit, and most importantly, the difference in the sale price. So the Court of Appeal awarded them money for the damages for staging, legal fees, carrying costs of the property, interest on the line of credit, and most importantly, the difference in the sale price. So you're on the hook for all of those things. So I've had a couple times where my client called and said, I'm not closing. And I said, okay, well, I think you better talk to your lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. And I can't tell you I'm not going to give you legal advice. I'm right now just trying to educate you enough for you to know that there is a lot more involved than just losing the deposit. And I always suggest, like, even with a mortgage amount, talk to your accountant or your mortgage broker. Even with tax write-offs or what you can do on capital gains, talk to your accountant. Like, rules change all the time, laws change all the time, new precedents are set. I'm not a lawyer, but these are the basic things that happen. Buyer wants to renegotiate the purchase price. What happens if I do not accept the offer? So the purchaser originally agreed to pay $1,555. The purchaser was willing to actually close for 1.4, which was $120,000 more than the vendors were able to sell the property for. However, even if the appellant had made an offer to pay 10% less for the property and not be released from his obligation under the agreement of purchase and sale, I would reject the suggestion that the duty to mitigate obliges a vendor to accept an offer from the defaulting purchaser for less than the agreed price. And then they'd have to sue the purchaser for the difference from the original agreed price. The seller in this case was awarded damages based on the amount they sold the property for in the end, and not based on the reduced offer by the buyer who failed to close. So the buyer said, I can't close at 155. I can only sell at, I can close at 1.4. And they rejected. Well, we're not doing that. So now we sold at 1.5, which is still $55,000 less than we originally got. So the original seller's on the hook for the difference. They can sue them. The plaintiff must prove their own calculation of damages. So like you're going to have all the bills, all the receipts, everything in order to take somebody to court for that. But we don't want to talk to the coronavirus because it's gone. So here's suggestions for buyers who cannot or do not want to close. You should, in almost all cases, try to close a deal, even if that involves seeking the help of friends and families to bridge the gap. See if the vendor will perform a vendor take-back mortgage. Consider alternate financing arrangements. However, if under no circumstances a buyer can close, the buyer may wish to consider trying to negotiate a mutual release. A seller cannot obtain the deposit without the buyer's consent or a court order. As a result, the buyer has some leverage via their deposit. So let me explain this. If I put in $25,000 to buy a house and I can't close the deal, I can't close it. The bank won't give me the money. They pull the finance in the last day. Happens to me all the time, honestly. It happens to people. Without a mutual release from that agreement of purchase and sale, I can't get my deposit back. Even if I can't close the deal, there's no way I can close the deal. I can't get the money. If you know in advance that you don't want to close and you can't close, you can ask for a mutual release. If they give you a mutual release and both people sign, you get your deposit back. Okay? You can get it back. The seller doesn't get the deposit. So 10 years ago, I had a client that gave a $15,000 deposit. He couldn't close the deal. He bought a truck, and 2 days before closing, the bank pulled all of his credit again and wouldn't give him the money. He couldn't close it. Century 21 kept the $15,000. The seller doesn't get it unless they go to court and get a court order to get it. So the seller never did that. So Century 21, 10 years later, still has the $15,000. My guy never went after it and tried to get a court order to get it back either, because technically he was in the wrong, and yeah, he forfeits. So if you agree a week before or 2 weeks before, and you know something's not, it's not going to happen, you can ask for a mutual release from the agreement. And if they agree to do that, you get your deposit back. So there's a lot of people who, for one, like, there are some that would actually do it if prices have gone up or their situation has changed. So, I mean, your first rule of thumb is you try to get a mutual release, you try to get your money back. I had another client that didn't close. She went to the brokerage. There's a 2-year statute of limitations. She went there, she fought for it, she got her deposit back because she couldn't close, but it was no fault of her own. The mortgage company pulled the money and had given a full approval, and then the day before pulled the money due to some document that they didn't like. Like, they don't get in trouble for this at all. They can pull out of anything at the last minute whenever they want to, and there's no repercussion. The repercussion is on you. So she did fight, and she did get it back. So if you're not going to close a deal, there's a lot of ramifications to that. And I always suggest you talk to your lawyer for sure. Now, the mutual release usually gets done through a realtor. So if you're trying to get out, even a builder, you can go there and say, okay, I want out of the deal. and see if he'll make an like he'll let you out. That's your first step. If they won't let you out, then you got to figure out a way to close it. Even if you get private money and then try to sell it and get out of it, get private money for a year, do something, and then, sell it and get out of it, because you're going to lose a lot more money if you don't close. If you like my content, hit the like, the subscribe, or drop questions in the comments for me, and I will inform you or answer in the most educated way I can. Have a great day.